The term aquavitae makes its first appearance in the Scottish history books in 1494, where there is an entry of malt being sold to one Friar John Corr to make the spirit. But the term whisky actually appears rather later, being derived from the Gaelic for water of life, Usqua Bay. In 1618, accounts of the funeral and wake of a Highland chieftain mentions Usqua as being served, and from this point onwards, Scotch whisky was produced in earnest. William Grant and his family worked tirelessly to create their exceptional single malt, and the Glenfiddich name very quickly became an assurance of quality. Crystal clear water from the Robbie Dhu springs, the finest Scots barley, pure Highland air, and unusually small stills all contributed to make William Grant's Glenfiddich a unique and much loved single malt. This really is the perfect opportunity to take a look in close-up at how Scotch malt whisky is made. It will vary between distilleries, and Glenfiddich has specific ways of doing things, but these are the basic principles. Just like their Scottish forefathers who soaked their barley in a local burn, the malting process begins with barley being steeped in water. After 2 to 4 days, the barley is drained and spread across a large stone malting floor, where it is allowed to germinate. Some distilleries still turn the barley by hand daily, but many now have mechanised the process. After 8 to 12 days, an enzyme called diastase will have been produced, which converts the barley to starch and sugar solubles, known in the trade as green malt. Once the wort has been cooled, it's transferred to washbacks, large wooden or stainless steel tubs, where yeast can be added to begin the fermentation process. It takes about 48 hours for this to happen, famously at 21 degrees. Now there was a time when PC simply referred to a police constable, but in today's climate where political correctness is a burning issue, it's almost controversial to say that the male-dominated whisky-making workforce of generations past remembered the temperature for this tricky stage by comparison with a woman of 21, which all sagely agreed was when she was at her most awkward. The wash is boiled so that the alcohol level rises to roughly 23 degrees in the vapour, which then condenses in a cooling plant of traditionally coiled pipes and cold water. This piece of equipment has always been referred to as the worm, and even though some of the newer, more technologically advanced versions have no coiled pipes whatsoever, to the whisky makers of Scotland, it's still a worm. A certain amount of whisky will evaporate during this final process, but even the thrifty Scot can do nothing to prevent this, and what's lost has to be philosophically written off as the angel's share. At Glenfiddich, there's also an opportunity to see the whisky being bottled, as this is one of the few distilleries to bottle on site. Important too to remember that Speyside is not the only place where you can find great Scotch whisky. There are plenty of Scottish islands that produce single malts of their own distinctive characters, and there's a wealth of fascinating exploration to be undertaken to search them all out once you've mastered the basics. But be warned, appreciating Scotch whisky involves a lifetime of effort, and once you've started, there's no going back.